This is Christianity 101, the podcast connecting busy people with Jesus. I'm your host, Rick Grundy.
This is episode 10, a Christmas special. Merry Christmas.
Welcome back to another episode of Christianity 101. And again, we get to take another look at Christmas, which I told you is probably one of my most favorite times of the year because it brings out the little dad in me, not the little boy in me. I think I'm having much more fun as a dad at Christmases. Last year, I was thinking, what makes a really, really great Christmas? What makes that perfect Christmas day for that family memory thing, being with family, opening presents, doing stuff, meeting with other people? Like what makes the perfect Christmas day? And I was thinking about last year. Last year, as I'm trying to figure out, was last year the perfect Christmas day? The kids were up by about 4 a.m. It could have been 3 a.m. I think it was, but definitely by 4 a.m. And as I'm in the bed and they're waking me up, I said, okay, go open your stockings, because that's what they're for. I put stockings by their bed and I say, you go ahead and open your stockings first, and I'm really just praying for 30 minutes to an hour more sleep. That's what I'm doing. So they went and they opened up their stockings, and then I got up and we all had breakfast together. After breakfast, we read Luke chapter 2, because that's a Christmas story, and I always need to remind them that this is the reason why we have Christmas, because it's all about the birth of Jesus, and we prayed together. Then after that, then they got really excited and they kind of dove into their presents, and then after they opened their presents, I basically recorded the whole thing and I took a lot of pictures. It's almost like I'm not even present during the event, because I'm just taking all these pictures. And then we built the presents when it was all done. And then around lunchtime, when we were getting hungry, that's exactly when Grandpa showed up, and Grandpa showed up with lots of food. Late afternoon, when the kids were getting antsy about being inside all day, the uncles showed up with even more presents, and the kids got to open them. Then we built those presents, and then we played some more. And when the family all left, it was bath time and bedtime, and we all went to bed early because Mommy and Daddy said we're going to bed early. And sort of the question in my mind is that the Christmas day? I'm sorry that you weren't able to join us in service at Hillside Community Church, because at this moment, as I'm going through the message on Sunday, I handed out a few boxes of chocolates because I wanted to get everybody's impressions about what their version of the perfect Christmas day was. Because, I don't know if I can settle on this is definitely a perfect Christmas day and this is definitely a better routine over somebody else's. But that's what I wanted to look at in the podcast today. Today we're continuing the theme of Christmas, talking about God becoming a man. At an actual point in human history, God broke into our existence, because he exists out of time, right? God broke into our existence and he became a man. And we celebrate that occasion on Christmas Day. Did God break into our existence, and was he actually born on December 25th? Probably not. I don't know the exact date when Jesus entered the world and was born. I have no idea. But I do know that December 25th is the day we choose to celebrate the incarnation. We choose to celebrate the birth of Jesus. And today in this podcast, what I wanted to do is I want to look at what it means to have that perfect Christmas. Because it's pretty hard for me to say that my Christmas Day schedule is better than your Christmas Day schedule. I think the Bible really speaks to what that perfect Christmas day really looks like. I'm going to be taking everything I say from Luke chapter 2, verses 6 to 18. Not going to take the time to read it right now, but I will take the time to read it as we go through the episode. And as we look at Luke chapter 2, 6 to 18, I really want us to figure out how to have the perfect Christmas. And what the Bible, this passage here tells us about how you and I can have the perfect Christmas. Throughout this episode, we're going to be talking about the three big deal items that we typically think of on Christmas Day: relationships, expectations, and giving. That's what we're going to be addressing in this episode as we look at the text: relationships, expectations, and giving. So let's jump right in with the material here, looking at the text and trying to figure out how do we have the perfect Christmas day. Okay, first of all, to have the perfect Christmas, first of all, I'll use just this one word to summarize everything I'm about to say here, and that one word is connect. Okay, we're going to talk about connecting. Now, I'm going to take this from Luke chapter 2, verses 6 through 7. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. I really love the Luke chapter 2 account of the Christmas story because it's all there. I mean, it misses the Magi from Matthew, but I really like it because it's spelled out really, really well. I remember my loneliest Christmas day. I had some good Christmas days growing up, but some of them were pretty horrible. And I remember my most horrible Christmas day. I was on my own. I was a bachelor, on my own, living on my own, in a very small, just it wasn't even a one bedroom. It didn't have a closet. It was a closet almost. It was big enough to put my mattress in there and fit my bar fridge in there and a small TV with my VCR in my forehead VCR with the not surround sound, with the stereo sound outputs on top of my little color TV. And so on Christmas Day, I woke up and I could barely afford anything. You know, I was broke. I wouldn't say I was poor. I just had no money. And there I was in my little closet of a room all by myself. And I opened up my fridge door. I had a couple of pieces of bread left, and I had some jam left, and I think I had a banana. And I went to go get that banana, but the people who lived above me, their kids came down and stole my bananas out of my room, and I didn't even have a banana. So I had I think 2 pieces of bread and jam for the whole day. That's all I had. And I had my Star Wars videos and that I was watching on my little TV. And I spent the whole day alone because everybody else, including my girlfriend at the time, they all had their family stuff to do, and I had nothing. And I promised myself, that I would never let that happen again. And I never did let that happen again. It was the loneliest Christmas because I didn't plan for it. I did nothing in advance. I was just working. I was doing the church stuff. I was putting together Christmas musicals, Christmas plays, putting together banquets and stuff like that, working behind the scenes, you know, as the intern or part-time pastor. I don't remember what my title was back then, but I forgot to do something for myself, and I promised myself I'd never let that happen, which is why shortly after, by February, I had proposed to my then girlfriend, and she's my wife now, Michelle. I proposed to her, and when I proposed to her, I told her, listen, you can pick whatever date you want for our wedding, but it has to be before Christmas. And it certainly was. And she's like, Rick, why are we having a winter wedding? I said, because I don't want to be lonely on Christmas Day again. I think we understand how important it is to connect with people during Christmas. And I think you know that the most important connection, at least I hope you know, that the most important connection that we can make isn't actually with each other, but it's first with Jesus. The most important connection that you and I can make is with Jesus first. And to connect with Jesus, timing is everything. Did you hear what I said there? To connect with Jesus, timing is everything. God's timing is perfect. The text says the time came. Just this last week, I got home, and when I walked in, all of my kids had just been put down. They're in their blankets, and I go up into the room where Tina was, and she's shivering. And she says, Daddy, I am cold. And her teeth are kind of chattering a little bit, even though she's under her blankets. And it's because of her jammies. She's got these favorite jammies she likes, but she's been wearing them for a long time now, and they have thinned out, and there's holes in them. There's a couple of holes in the knees that are bigger now. They might as well be shorts, and they're just thin just because they've worn down. And she won't stop wearing them because they're her favorite jammies. But she's there under her cover, shivering, saying, "Daddy, I'm cold." And it just so happens that I had the mindset enough to go to the store first and pick up some onesies, because she said she loves onesies, and I'm trying to make her warmer because we're in a Canadian winter, and this is a polar vortex kind of winter that we're having timing these days. And so I stopped off at the store and I found a onesies that I thought she would like, and I brought it home. And talk about perfect timing. I pulled this onesies out of the bag, and it had little pictures of penguins on it, and her favorite animal is a penguin for some reason. Can't quite figure that out. But anyways, she instantly fell in love with them, and so she dashed into the washroom so that Daddy couldn't see, and she changed into her onesie and came back, and she loved it. And it was one of these flannel type of onesies that are really, really super warm. She got back in her bed, and that was perfect timing, okay? It was perfect timing. It was a timing where she recognized her need. She felt that she was freezing. She saw the solution that I was holding in my hand, and then she chose to make a change. She chose to give up her favorite jammies, which were making her cold, and she chose to switch to the flannel onesie that I got her, and the timing was perfect. I wish my timing was that good all the time. It's not that good all the time, but yeah, on that particular occasion, it was good. The text says the time came. Apparently, it was the perfect timing for the world to recognize their need, to see the solution, and to make a change. And of course, I have to say that in faith because I can't see what God sees. But God decided that, God determined, God discerned, and he can do that because he has infinite wisdom. He doesn't only exist in this time, he exists out of time. He can see everything. So he knew that that was the perfect time to send Jesus. Now let's talk about the timing of this just a moment. I want to get a little historical about this for a moment because there's something that we can't see if we're just sticking to the New Testament and even just sticking to the Old Testament. In between the last book of the Old Testament, which is Malachi, and then the first book of the New Testament, which is Matthew, is 400 years, over 300 years, about 400 years, 400 years. Now this is a strange time in world history because it was God's habit to send a prophet to every single generation of Israel to keep his voice fresh. Ever since he spoke to Abraham and gave Abraham the promise, and then Isaac, and then Jacob, and then all down the line, there was always a fresh voice from God for every generation. The world did not have this time where it never heard from God until Malachi was written. And then there was 400 years where there was no more fresh voice. Now it's very different today. We don't really understand this so much. Every one of us who have chosen to believe in Jesus, we all have the Holy Spirit. And you and I who believe in Jesus, we have this Holy Spirit. We can speak a fresh voice of God to every generation because we have that Spirit. That wasn't the case in the Old Testament. In the books of Maccabees, now, Maccabees are not biblical. It's not God revealing himself. It's just history. In the historical books called Maccabees, and I don't remember how many there are, 1, 2, 3. I don't think there's 4. I think there's 1, 2, 3 Maccabees. I can't remember. In the books of Maccabees, there was a recognition that it had been a long time since a prophet had spoken. They recognized, now wait a minute, every single generation, we've either had some kind of judge or we've had a prophet or something, a priest or something, that has spoken on behalf of God to let us know what God's will is, but we haven't had this for a very, very long time. That partly meant that it was time for Israel to reflect on what God had already said, to prepare themselves for the Messiah that he had promised to send. Listen, at just the right time. It took 400 years for God to finally decide, okay, now is the right time. At just the right time, God sent Jesus to the world. But what does that really mean? Does it mean that God is orchestrating history to lead it to its predetermined conclusion? Well, actually, partly, yeah, it does mean that. So does that mean that every choice that we make and everything we do is also led by God? God knows ahead of time if we're going to choose him or not. So it's almost like we're pawns just playing out this game, like playing out this, like we're actors or something, and all the world is a stage for us to just go through all of the motions that God has determined that we should be going through. No, that's not what it means at all. God created us to be in a relationship with him. So he designed creation and us with this randomness and with this free will. If God were to choose for us, what kind of relationship would that be. Now, I say this, and I'm going here because I've had these talks with at least one person from my church named David, and he and I have been talking about this, and he's like, Rick, why is this? What's going on here? Like, if God already knows who's going to choose him, and he already knows the outcome, like, what's the deal? What is the deal with all of human history, as though we just got to play this out and let it unfold when God already knows? Okay, well, yeah, God does know, but it's not like he's making our choices for us, and it's not like he's leaving us alone either. God's timing is perfect, and God's perfect timing means this. He has given us the freedom to choose him, but he hasn't left us alone. He breaks into creation, and he intersects with us frequently in order to help us to choose him. So even though there's this randomness in creation, he's given us this free will, he doesn't leave us alone. He breaks into creation and intersects with our lives to help us to make the choice to choose him. Now let's talk about Christmas for a moment. Jesus was sent at the time that God felt it was best to intersect with our free will and our free choice. He came at the moment he felt would give the world, would give you and I the best possible chance to choose a relationship with him. Now let's just acknowledge something here. Life is often hard. I think about what's happening in Syria right now. I think about the crazy war that's going on, Aleppo, and I think about what's happening in our day-to-day lives around here. The choices we make can lead to really painful outcomes. The world looks like it's gone mad, spinning out of control. I'm telling you, as I see what's happening in Syria, it's kind of hard for me to have a good Christmas, knowing that other people are basically living in hell right now. It is an absolute heartbreak, and I'm obviously shielding my children from some of that. But my son, he's 12 now. I can't shield him from it. We're having discussions about it. How can you have this really great Christmas when horrible things are going on throughout the world? Life is often hard, and the choices that other people make can make our life hard, and the choices that we make can make our life hard too. Where is God's timing in the painful times of life that we go through? Now, I don't have a perfect answer for this, but I think I have an answer for this. God intersects with us to help us choose a relationship with him, because at the end of the day, what matters to eternity is your choice for or against Jesus. And I'm sorry, that might sound heartless. It might even sound callous. But the thing that God really wants is a relationship with you and with me. And God breaks into our horrible reality sometimes for the purpose of you and I to choose him, because there is no peace in this life without Jesus. When we choose Jesus, then peace comes. In eternity, every tear will be wiped away. There'll be no more sadness, no more pain, no more heartbreak, no more bad relationships, painful memories, fear of people or events, sickness, hostility, name it. No hostility between people in heaven. At the end of the day, we're headed to glory. And that is what really matters. And if we want glory on the world, if we want peace on the world, it is vitally important that we lead people to Jesus and we get people connected to Jesus. Now, God is gracious and God is kind and wants to help us every single day, and he will miraculously intersect with us to help us. Okay, but when we're talking about the big deal, the big idea, of why Jesus came when he did, here's my opinion. God discerned that it was the best possible time to intersect with our free wills, with our free choices, so that we had the best possible chance of responding to him by accepting the offer of a restored relationship with him. And that is what the world needs. The world in its entirety needs restored, all the people need restored relationships with Jesus. That is the only thing that's going to save our planet. Now, God's timing is perfect, which is a statement that I can, that you can, that we can only say in faith, knowing what God's purpose is. And that's to bring us all into a relationship with him. We can't see ourselves that God's timing is perfect, but we know his purpose, we know what he's about, because the Bible shows us God's timing is perfect. But that's not the end of the story. God's timing may be perfect, but our timing is usually horrible. The text says, no guest room available. Now, I came home at a certain time last week, and this is a regular occurrence for me. I came in, and I absolutely frustrated my wife, and this happens quite frequently. I came in, and the kids are in bed. They're all tucked in, and I didn't come home late enough for them to be asleep yet. They were still awake. They were kind of settling, but they were still awake. And so when I walked in, it was after their bedtime. It was late, and they all came except for my little 2-year-old, who is locked into her crib and falls asleep right away. The other 3 came downstairs, and they wanted to connect with Daddy and give Daddy some hugs, tell Daddy about their day, that kind of thing. So we've got this Daddy reunion going on right in front of the door, and they're all waking up. And my wife wants to tear a strip off me or something because she's frustrated because she wants a break. She wants to do whatever she wants to do, which is not kid related. My timing is off a whole lot when it comes to working late. Now, the text says no guest room available. Now, in my opinion, that no room thing probably wasn't referring to an inn. It's probably referring to people's homes, in my opinion. When traveling, the Jews would rely on other Jewish hospitality to put them up for the night. And notice that it says no guest room. This guest room, this word, if we were to look in the Greek, the word can actually be used for something like upper room, like on the day of Pentecost. This isn't the same kind of word that was used like in the parable of the Good Samaritan, when the Good Samaritan brought him to this place and paid for him to stay there and paid for his care. That's a different word used for that kind of room. This room really is more of a household room that is talked about, not an inn. Also, notice there's no mention of an innkeeper here, okay? I know that in the stories, there's a lot of when we like to Hollywoodify it, or when we like to put it on a stage and have a Christmas skit about it, there's a lot of reference to an innkeeper kind of being a sort of begrudgingly offering his stable. There's no mention of an innkeeper here at all. Notice also the phrase says the time came. It doesn't say there was an emergency. It doesn't say, while Mary was on her donkey at midnight in the middle of the street and it was cold. It doesn't say there's an emergency here. It's very casual. The time came. Just okay. It's time. It's time for the baby to come. It's not a last minute emergency. So wherever this was that Mary and Joseph stayed, it's probably a relative of Joseph, I'm guessing. Some kind of distant relative of Joseph, just a guess. The guest room was taken. So that upper room was taken, that extra room, it was taken. So they used a manger as a bed, and they stayed in the main room, like the living room, that big room, the common room, I guess. That's kind of what's going on here. And because the guest room was not available, they brought in a manger, filled it with hay, and they used that as a crib. However, there's a big deal here that we have noticed before, and we're going to notice again. There was a guest room available. There just wasn't a desire to give it up. Our timing is really horrible sometimes. No one was looking for Jesus to be born when they should have been. People were busy with the census. People were busy with their Christmas, trying to make their perfect Christmases. People weren't busy thinking about God, so there's no room for Jesus because people's timing is horrible. Could there have been a guest room available? Well, absolutely. If our timing as people wasn't horrible, then there could have been, but there was no priority here. They weren't looking for Jesus to come. We weren't looking for Jesus to come, and that's why there was no room for him, no guest room for him. Christmas is so busy. I've been trying to connect with some of the people from my church, but our schedules are absolutely crazy right now. So we're looking to connect in January and beyond. Everyone is so busy, and I'm so busy too, trying to connect with some family. We're so busy that people just don't schedule Jesus in in a general sense of that. I mean, most believers, we try to schedule Jesus in, but this is pretty busy for us. And some believers around this time, they even skip church. They even skip the Christmas Eve service, for crying out loud. And I hope, Christmas lands on a Sunday this year. I hope that there's going to be I think there will be some people showing up for the Christmas service. And I love it. My personal opinion is that we should be having a church service every single Christmas morning. That's just my personal opinion. I would love to see that happen. God scheduled us into his plans to give us the opportunity to respond to his offer of friendship. but people's timing is horrible. People weren't looking for it. Now, here's two ways our timing can be horrible. As believers, we can be so busy with life that we don't make time for Jesus. We give him our manger while we give our shopping and our family plans our guest room. That's what we're doing. Also, here's second of all, our friends who are not believers, they don't put Jesus or church on their schedules. They give shopping and family their guest rooms, and they're not even aware that Jesus is laying in a manger. The solution for both kinds of people are exactly the same. Give Jesus your attention and lean into that relationship that God has come to offer us. So connect. If you want to make that perfect Christmas day, connect. Jesus has come at the best possible time, and we say that in faith, knowing that God knows more than we do. Jesus is wanting to connect with us at our busiest possible times, mostly because our priorities aren't in sync with God's. That's why we're busy. So as soon as you can, press into the relationship and grow that relationship. Stop shopping so much. Stop buying so much. Stop running up your credit cards. Actually, cut up your credit cards. Stop paying with debt. Stop connecting with everyone you possibly can. Start giving priority to Jesus by scheduling your daily time with him. Here's how. The first way to have the best possible Christmas. First, connect with Jesus. Make it about him, not about presents or food or shopping. Make it about the relationship. Let's talk about another way, a second way. Okay, if you're trying to make, just like I'm trying to make, the perfect Christmas, here's the second thing that we need to do to make it the perfect Christmas. And I'm just going to summarize this point just with one word, and that word is believe. I'm going to read from chapter 2 of Luke, verses 8 to 10, and this is where I'm taking this content from. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people." My favorite Christmas song, believe it or not, it's not actually in the hymn book. It's not a hymn. It's not a carol. It's The Little Drummer Boy. I'm pretty sure Little Drummer Boy is not in the hymn book. I'm pretty sure about that. It's my favorite Christmas song. And I think it's because when I was a kid, I felt like I was poor. I felt like I was an outcast. I moved like 9 times before I got to grade 7, and we're moving around in government housing. I can't remember what you call that, just the government assisted living. And when it came to Christmas time, I was getting like Starbuckses. Like we couldn't afford presents. Well, we probably could, but there was no priority. We have messed up priorities. And so I got these things called Starbuckses, and in these Starbuckses were these, I don't know, like a dollar store kind of present. One year it was great. One year I got boots, and it was the only year I had boots. It was awesome. But anyway, so I felt like the poor boy that nobody really liked. And when I went to school, I looked like the poor boy that nobody really liked. And so whenever I heard the song Little Drummer Boy, I really connected with this song because I felt like, oh, this is really speaking to me. This is who I am, kind of like that. Now, even today, when I put up my Christmas tree, I make sure there's a little drummer boy on my Christmas tree. When I was a single guy, when I was a bachelor, the little drummer boy used to be the tree topper of my like little 1.5 foot tree that I had set up on top of my bar fridge. Anyways, Vanessa recognizes the song. Vanessa's my 2-year-old. She recognizes the song now when it comes on in the car or wherever, and she knows it enough to sing the parumpa pum pum line. Our little 2-year-old, she claps when she hears the song, and she sings along to it, parumpa pum pum. She knows how to sing that line. She gets so excited about it. I think that might be that whole little kind of little drum boy thing. I think that might be the reason why the shepherds are my favorite story segment in the whole nativity story from Luke chapter 2. The shepherds are one of my favorite story segments. I mean, Jesus, of course, is my first favorite, but the shepherds right after Jesus, I love this because these are poor boys all grown up. The shepherds were low. Shepherds were guys who spent their life living with the animals. These aren't vets. These are the first line of defense against predators and any other dangers, okay? Like the sheep are more important than the shepherds. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about like dog walkers, except the dogs will be more important than the dog walkers, that kind of thing. Now, as far as I can tell, these are not the animal owners. These are just the hired help, the lowest of the lows. The sheep were far more important than the shepherds. That's the scenario I think we're seeing here. Now, here's why the shepherds are one of my favorite people in the whole Christmas story. Because there is nothing more lowly than a shepherd. Well, that's not true. There's nothing more lowly than a shepherd other than Jesus himself. Jesus is more lowly than a shepherd. And that's intentional. Jesus was intentional about this. He made himself more lowly than a shepherd. And here's why. If Jesus was born into a king's household, no one but the king and the great officials would have access to him. If Jesus was born as just an average Joe, then other average people related to Jesus could access him, but the shepherds couldn't for sure, and strangers couldn't for sure. It would just be a family thing. Jesus was born as a foreigner, kind of a foreigner, without a room, with an animal feed trough as a bed. You don't get much lower than that. He didn't have a house where he was. He didn't have a room where he was. He was an outsider where he was. And Joseph and Mary were not married yet. And so there's a stigmatism with that. You got to figure this is a couple being shunned because out of wedlock, they have this baby that they're walking around with. So this is the lowest of the lows. Jesus was born lowly enough so that everyone has access to him. He is so accessible that strange and filthy shepherds couldn't be kept out of the birthing unit. Okay, Mary just gave birth to this baby, and suddenly these strange, filthy shepherds burst into the house to manhandle the baby. I shudder to think what would have happened if somebody walked in on Michelle after she gave birth to our firstborn son. When we were in the whole birthing unit and Michelle was pushing, she was quite loud. She was very loud, so loud in fact that a nurse walked in, and a nurse, while she was bearing down, a nurse looked at her and said, "Michelle, you're too loud. You need to lower your voice because you're scaring the other mothers in delivery." And that didn't bless Michelle at all. Michelle wanted to hurt that nurse who told her to be quiet. And so as the next push came, she honestly, with the push, she gave it everything she had, and she did a tummy crunch, and she tried to bite the nurse that told her to quiet down. I kid you not. Michelle tried to bite my wife, my adorable wife who would never harm anyone at all, tried to bite the nurse that told her to be quiet. And you may have wanted to do something similar, I'm sure. But look at the scene here. These filthy shepherds walk into this birthing unit, and there's nothing that Mary, Joseph, or Jesus could do because they are the lowest of the lows. And this is how Jesus intended it. God is accessible to you. Here's why the shepherds are so important to you. You have probably done something wrong, haven't you? Yeah, you have. You may have done something horrible, haven't you? I know I have, and I know you have too. We're both people. You may have done something horrible, and you may feel like you haven't amounted to much at all. You may feel inadequate. You may feel small. You know what? That's not okay, but you know what? That is okay. And here's why that's okay. The shepherds were low, but they were higher than Jesus. When the angel came to them, the angel says, "Don't be afraid." The shepherds weren't prepared to present themselves to anything other than sheep. Certainly not God. But the angel says, "Don't be afraid. You are okay just as you are. You don't need to clean up. You just need to connect with Jesus." And that message is the same for you. Don't be afraid. Don't let your past regrets stop you from approaching Jesus. Don't let your current failure stop you from connecting with Jesus. He wants you to connect with him just as you are. Jesus made himself as lowly as is possible in order to empower you to connect with him. No matter how low you feel you are higher than being born in a manger, in public, surrounded by strange men. So to have the perfect Christmas, secondly, you need to believe. Believe that Jesus wants you to have the perfect Christmas. Believe that Jesus empowers you to connect with him. Believe that connecting with Jesus is not a matter of being good enough or clean enough. Connecting with Jesus is a matter of belief. It's about believing that Jesus made himself lowly enough that you and I have been given access to him. It's about believing that he wants you to approach him just as you are. To have that perfect Christmas, connect with Jesus. Believe in Jesus. And if you do believe in Jesus, this last point is going to be brief. And again, I'm going to summarize it with just one word: share. That's the word, share. Taking this from chapter 2, verses 15 to 18. The text says, when the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds had said to them. Would you please tell people about Jesus? The text says they spread the word. Jesus loves being your friend. He absolutely loves being your friend. If you believe in him, he loves it. But you know what? He wants to be friends with the people around you too. And the way that happens is by you and by me spreading the word about him. The very best Christmas gift that any of us can have is the gift of a relationship with God that comes by faith in Jesus. Stop shopping. Stop accumulating debt. Instead, start sharing Jesus. It's more important for you to share Jesus and put another present underneath your tree or underneath somebody else's tree. It's so much more important for you to be sharing Jesus. Start giving the only gift worth giving. You know, it's like that Red Cross commercial. It's in you to give. Well, that's Jesus too. The Holy Spirit. Jesus is in you to give. Meeting physical needs are really important, and giving physical gifts can be important too. But there's something that's incomparably more important, and that is share Jesus. When you go ahead and give those gifts and meet those needs, Jesus says it's a cup of water in my name that gets the blessing, that gets God's approval. Meeting physical needs alone? Nope. Jesus didn't say that gets God's approval. Witnessing alone? Nope. Didn't say that. Jesus says it's a cup of water in my name. If you're giving gifts, if you're meeting needs, and you're not sharing the gospel, you are not approved by Jesus in that example that I was just sharing with you. Jesus says it's a cup of water in my name. The gospel absolutely has to be included with any kind of gift sharing or goodwill that we do all year long, and particularly during the Christmas time. Now, some people don't like this. Some people think that using words to communicate Jesus is offensive and ineffective, and we need to be sharing Jesus just by our lifestyle. And if I'm offending you, I'm so sorry. Sometimes I've got the gift of offending people. But let's look at how the shepherds did it, because the shepherds did it in a wonderful way. And if you're a little timid about sharing your faith with someone or sharing Jesus with somebody, look at what these grubby guys did to share Jesus, and look at how people responded to the words that they used. Okay, so share the gospel, tell people about Jesus in a way that brings joy and amazement. Whatever they said it in a way that brought joy and amazement to their listeners. Whoever they communicated to, you know, they communicated to people above their status, okay? Like these are little people in the office communicating to bosses, communicating to supervisors. That's kind of what's happening here. Whoever they communicated to, you know, they communicated to people above their status, people that could hurt them and get away with it. You know, some people think that evangelizing is offensive. Telling people about Jesus is offensive. Listen, if people are offended by your sharing the gospel, you're either a really bad and heartless communicator, or you're going to the wrong people. And I'm telling you now that you have to share the gospel with words. And if your response is, well, so many people do that and they hurt people and they're just so offensive. Well, listen to me. Are you listening to me? Stop comparing yourself with other people. Stop judging what other people are doing and ask yourself what you're doing. You need to be doing something. Now, yeah, they need to be correct and say, okay, well, maybe you're doing it wrong, but you actually need to be doing something. They're doing something, you're not. And if you're not doing something, do something. Now, I don't think that any of my listeners, and I don't know all of you, but I know a bunch of you. We've connected somehow. I think that most of the listeners here, we don't want to cause harm. We're not heartless. We're warm, loving, and gracious people. And I think that all of us have someone that we can connect with and we can communicate well. So connect with that person that you know. Forget about how other people are doing it, because that's an excuse for you not to do it. Stop your excuses, because you're not going to be judged by what other people are doing. You're going to be judged by what you're doing or what you're not doing, okay? So judge yourself right now. Are you sharing the gospel? Now connect with people and amaze them. If you're connecting with people and getting into arguments, you're doing it wrong, okay? You really are. If you're telling people about Jesus and people are all the time being like, there are people who are going to be offended by everything. I get that. But if every single time you share the gospel, people are offended by you, listen to me, you're doing it wrong. Okay, the shepherds, when they connected with people about the gospel, people were amazed and people were filled with joy. So here's my challenge to you, my encouragement for you to have some integrity about your Christianity and step up to the Great Commission that we've all been called to. And remember that if you deny Jesus before men, that Jesus is going to deny you before the Father. You need to own that, because that's true for all of us. So connect with people to amaze them, to bring them joy by using words to tell people that Christmas is really about Jesus and about God wanting a friendship with them. So to have the perfect Christmas, tell people about Jesus in a way that brings them joy. Here's how to have the perfect Christmas. Connect with Jesus, believe in Jesus, and share Jesus. If you do those three things, I think you're on your way to having that perfect Christmas. Here's the takeaway. Just this one sentence that I want to leave with you to wrap up this whole episode, so you don't have to memorize everything I said, but this one sentence in order to help you take something away from this episode that you can chew on. Here it is. Make this Christmas a perfect Christmas by connecting, believing, and sharing. Thanks for sticking with me to the very, very end. Merry Christmas. God bless you. I'll see you next time.